Hello. If you have watched any of my other videos, you will have probably noticed that for the most part, I talk about jerseys. Now, for this video, I've decided that I'm going to do something a little bit different for a change. And for only the third time in my channel's history, I'm going to be talking about something non-hockey jersey related. Now, the only other two times I've done it is when I talked about NHL goal horns and when I made a video on the whole All-Star Game controversy surrounding John Scott. And for this video, I'm going to be sharing my thoughts on the changes that were made to Hockey Night in Canada. Now, I know that I'm very late to the party talking about this, but the reason why I want to make a video about Hockey Night in Canada is because I've watched it my entire life, and it's been a Saturday night tradition for me for the vast majority of my life. Even as a little kid, I used to always watch Hockey Night in Canada, and to hear about some of the shakeups, because it has such a sentimental value to me, I felt it was worthy of a video. And on top of that, as you can see here with these two jerseys, I've decided to experiment with a new backdrop. And if enough people really like the idea of this backdrop, truth is, I'm thinking that I may start to use the backdrop like this a little more often. And when I'm not doing videos that require a computer slideshow, I think that this may be the type of backdrop you may start to see more often. And if you really like it, please let me know, because so far, in my opinion, it's kind of a case of love at first sight. And I definitely think that this backdrop will be making a return, because I think this would be a lot better to look at for a video rather than just a black space, just a black screen, nothing but audio. But anyways, now I'm going to talk about the changes with Hockey Night in Canada. And I want to start with the host. Because for the past 2 seasons, since Rogers has taken over for Hockey Night in Canada from CBC, Ron MacLean was replaced by George Stroumboulopoulos. And ever since Strombo has taken over, a lot of viewers have been very, very frustrated and have not liked him at all. And a lot of people have just never accepted Stroumboulopoulos as the host and Ron MacLean's replacement. And I can totally understand why. And for myself, this is the best way I can describe him. Think of it this way. Say you go out to the store and buy yourself a 20-piece puzzle set. And you take it home, you open it up, you've got your 20 pieces, but you look in the box and there's a 21st piece. And so anyways, you've got your 21 pieces, but the puzzle's only meant for 20. You put the puzzle together, and you've got that one piece left over. That's how I would describe George Stroumboulopoulos. Pretty much, in my opinion, he's always been the piece that has never fit anywhere in terms of a hockey program. As a host, from the day he took over, for myself, he's never been right. He always hits the stage in weird, tight, skinny suits. He's always got, for the most part, he's usually got a beard, and he's got piercings. And compared to the other on-air personalities on Hockey Night in Canada, he just never looked right. He never looked right. And compared to the other hosts, you could definitely tell he was lacking in terms of hockey knowledge. And he just wasn't right. And after 2 seasons, Rogers has finally listened to their fans and have not only taken Stroumboulopoulos away as a host, but they've replaced him with Ron MacLean and have brought him back to hosting Hockey Night in Canada. And they should not have switched MacLean for Stroumboulopoulos. And the way they did it was an awful idea. I mean, compared to the other on-air personalities, I mean, you've got a guy who's got a beard, skinny suits, and piercings. The guy was more of an urban hipster, not really a hockey host. And he never looked right. He didn't even look right on that set. And he's the type of guy who should be hosting a music video show or hosting a show like The Hour, which are both things he used to do. And he's the type of guy you would want to see hosting a music show or an entertainment show such as E-Talk or E.T. Canada for you Canadian people watching this video. And in my opinion, that's where he belongs. That's where he should be. That's what Stroumboulopoulos is good at. Entertainment and music. In fact, I used to watch his show called The Hour. And on The Hour, he used to interview musicians, and I even remember watching an episode where he interviewed Gary Bettman. And supposedly, one of the reasons why MacLean was taken off in the first place was because the Rogers executives didn't really like the idea of Ron MacLean being so willing to be combative with Gary Bettman. And personally, I disagree with that because I hate it when all these reporters all kiss Gary Bettman's butt and never ask him real hard questions and never put him on the spot. And that was one thing I've always respected about Ron MacLean. As an interviewer, he had a little bit of balls. And I have a lot of respect for that. And I'm so sick and tired of so many TV analysts and interviewers just doing the bare minimum and just not even willing to ask good questions. They just ask the bare minimum just to get an answer and that's it. Actually, ask these people some legitimate questions. Ask them why they've made some bad decisions. Ask them why they haven't done certain things. That's the type of thing people want to see. They don't want to just see some arguably choreographed interview, pre-planned. Like, that's not what I want to see. That's not what viewers want to see. That's stupid. And that was one thing that I loved about Ron MacLean in his interviews with Gary Bettman. Is that a lot of times he had the balls to put that man on the spot. And as somebody watching those interviews, I used to love it. And I hope that MacLean gets back to doing that again. That was one little thing that I really, really liked about Ron MacLean. And I've missed it since he's been gone. And with Ron MacLean coming back, CBC's Hockey Night in Canada will be finally getting a host again that actually knows about hockey, is deeply passionate about the game, and knows what he's talking about. And so many people were saying that he felt like Ron MacLean said it like this. He said that for a lot of viewers, they felt that he was a comfortable pair of shoes. And he's absolutely right. Ron MacLean, you know what? If they were going to replace Ron MacLean, they needed to find somebody who was very knowledgeable. And unfortunately, George Stroumboulopoulos just did not make the cut. And in my opinion, Stroumboulopoulos is not a bad host. That's not the problem. I think he's a good host. And I understand where Sportsnet was coming from because they were trying to appeal to us younger viewers out there. But here's the thing. Whether you're young or old, I think most of us have made it pretty damn clear to Rogers. We want a host who understands the game. We don't want some urbanite hipster who doesn't really know much about hockey. We want someone who knows what they're talking about, and we want someone deeply passionate with the game. And that's why Ron MacLean is back after 2 years of being replaced by George Stroumboulopoulos. And in my personal opinion, the past 2 seasons with Hockey Night in Canada have been like the 2 seasons that the New York Islanders had in the mid-1990s with the Gorton's Fisherman jerseys. And the 2 years I'm talking about are the ones with the Gorton's Fisherman logo on the front. Not the Islanders classic logo on the front that they've worn since 1972. And anyways, I kind of felt that Hockey Night in Canada has been such a mess that it's reminded me of the Gorton's Fisherman era of the New York Islanders, where there's been a lot of lost interest, and the amount of interest in the intermissions and pre-game shows has completely gone down the crapper. And even in the playoffs this past season, ratings were down 61% in the first round. Though I think that's more to blame on the fact that all 7 Canadian teams did not make the playoffs, which is absolutely unheard of and has not happened since, I believe, 1970. That's pretty sad. And when no Canadian teams are making the playoffs, that's bad for Canadian television ratings. Seriously, that was brutal. But anyways, that's also part of the reason why Rogers has decided to drop the axe and make some changes. Now, with Stroumboulopoulos gone and Ron MacLean back, that's definitely a tremendous step in the right direction. But on top of that, CBC has now got more changes coming to Hockey Night in Canada. And I should say it a little differently because Hockey Night in Canada is also on Sportsnet and City TV. Now, with some of the regional broadcasts, Rogers has decided to cut back on those too. Billy Jaff, Chantal Desjardins, Leah Hextall, and Corey Hirsch have all been cut. They're gone. They're not coming back. But one person I am going to miss is Corey Hirsch. And my reasoning for it is because I've heard that recently was divorced. And I don't wish that on anyone. And I remember hearing something saying that he was pretty depressed as a result. And the truth is, I do feel pretty bad for him. And I hope that guy finds a job somewhere. And I'm sure somebody will pick him up. I didn't think he was that bad. And as for the others, I mean, I feel bad for them too. Like some of them, I didn't think Chantel or Leah were that bad. And Billy Jaff was alright. For regional casts or regional programs. But the thing is, I can appreciate Rogers wanting to cut back, especially with the past 2 seasons and the fact that they just have not been doing that well with ratings. And when you've spent $5.2 billion on a 12-year TV rights deal to the NHL's games in Canada, in Hockey Mad Canada, when things aren't working out, you better do something, and you better do something quick to fix it. And if this is going to result in better programming, unfortunately for those guys, it's got to be done. And I hear that instead of having all these little regional newscasts and regional shows, Rogers is going to cut it back to just one. And they've also decided that finally they're going to start to do a little bit more to make the Saturday Hockey Night in Canada program a little bit more special. Really, guys, it's about damn time. First off, when Rogers came in, they got rid of Satellite Hot Stove, and they also got rid of Behind the Mask with Kelly Rudy. In my opinion, both of those need to make a comeback, especially especially Satellite Hot Stove. I mean, that was one of my favorite intermission shows, and they always went in depth on some of the best rumors around in the NHL. Like, they always talked about struggling franchises, they talked about rumors about trades and firings, and it was always something that I've enjoyed watching. And ever since Rogers has taken over, that's been one thing that has really been a huge turnoff for me. And when a lot of times in the past couple of seasons, with intermissions, I have not been watching them. And the fact that they got rid of some of my favorite programs during the intermissions was a huge piss off for me. And I just hope that they make a comeback. Now, as for Coach's Corner as well, supposedly Don Cherry's airtime was cut by about 5 minutes. Now, I know not everybody cares for that stubborn old man, but let me tell you, I'd rather hear him for another 5 minutes than some of these analysts. Seriously. And speaking of these analysts, they've also fired PJ Stock and Glenn Healy. And it's about damn time. I've never, ever liked Glenn Healy. I've always felt he was way too brash, and I felt a lot of times he was pro-Leafs. And it was really frustrating to hear him sometimes. And I thought he was a bit of a prick. And same can be said with PJ Stock. A lot of times he would go on and say the stupidest things sometimes. And that guy was a bit of an irritant. And him and Glenn Healy now being gone. Holy crap, I never thought I'd see the day. I'm glad. They needed to go. Both of them. I hated listening to them both. They always thought they were better than everyone else sometimes. And sometimes I got that vibe out of them. Not always, but a lot of times I did. And you know what? I wish them both the best of luck. But seriously, I'm glad they're gone. And I'm being very nice about that, as you can tell. But seriously, I just have not liked them. And Glenn Healy, even when the Leafs are down, we're losing bad sometimes, he'd just go on like they're the best thing since sliced bread, and I found that very annoying. And, I'm glad they're gone. But another thing that's really pissed me off with the Rogers takeover is Sofia Juxta. And speaking of that Coach's Corner being cut back, you know what she's been doing the past couple of seasons? Constantly. I see her come on, and she's talking about something to do with Rogers Game Center Live. Like, pretty much, for the past couple of seasons, she's been a human robot. And with this past NHL draft, with her talking about things on Twitter, that was the first time I've actually seen her reporting on something. But seriously, if all she's going to talk about is Game Center Live and what people are saying on Twitter, seriously, they should just cut her too. Because if that's all, I don't care what people are saying on Twitter. And I absolutely do not want to hear about Rogers Game Center Live. Because honestly, I do not care. I just don't care. And I guarantee you viewers out there that I'm not the only one. And I'm sure you probably are part of that group of people too. It's just such a pain in the butt. And all she would talk about is what's on Twitter or what's going on with Rogers Game Center Live. Like, seriously? Stop it. Like, if Rogers is going to get her to read the scores or something, then yes, keep her. But if all she's going to do is promote Rogers Game Center Live and be a human robot, seriously, cut her. because I would much rather listen to Don Cherry talk for another 5 minutes than have that time put towards Sofia advertising Rogers' services. Seriously. Baffles me how Rogers thought that was a good idea. It was pretty much a case of me, and screw you, viewers. Yeah, good going, Rogers. Hopefully you guys have finally woken up. And with all this that has happened, in my personal opinion, and I apologize for using a word as fancy as this, but I find that this whole Hockey Night in Canada situation has been a little bit of what I would say, a microcosm of society right now, where we are all so focused on quantity that we don't ever bother to take the time to step back and focus on quality. And it sounds like Rogers is going to try and start focusing on quality, which is what they should have been doing the day they took over. Instead of spending all this time and money on a new set, to have people like Nick Kyprios standing around on some artificial ice surface or ice-like surface holding a hockey sticks. These guys should be talking about the game and being analysts. And seriously, you know what Rogers should be doing, in my opinion? They should be getting people on Hockey Night in Canada that are good analysts, such as Ray Ferraro, Bob McKenzie, and James Duffy. I mean, there was a reason why I used to love watching TSN's intermissions, because those people actually were good personalities and they knew what they were talking about. And it wasn't just a whole bunch of jibber jabber. They actually talked about some good in-depth stuff. Like, where the hell is that? Like, that was one thing that you know what, there were quite a few friends of mine that were telling me the same thing. Back when Rogers took over, they're like, oh no, as soon as these guys take over, we're not going to have these good analysts anymore. And they were absolutely right. Absolutely right. They called it. And I just hope that Rogers takes some more time to find some better analysts while they're at it. And I think some of these firings are a good step. They're a good first step. And it seems like Rogers is willing to go back to step one again, or to square one. And I hope that from there, not only will they improve their programming on Hockey Night in Canada, I also hope that they'll finally find some half-decent analysts. I mean, goodness me. I mean, the guys at TSN, in my personal opinion, completely blow them out of the water. Don't even get me started on that. Goodness me. But yeah, I mean, with Hockey Night in Canada for the past couple of seasons, to be honest with you viewers out there, I have been spending more time in the intermissions checking my computer and surfing the internet. Because I found that more interesting than those analysts and Sofia Juxta talking about Rogers Game Center Live. And with Ron MacLean taking over the hosting duties again, and also I thought I'd mention that David Amber will now be hosting the evening games, which I think is a great move. And personally, I really like David Amber. I think that Rogers is now finally on the right track. And speaking of George Stroumboulopoulos, even though in my opinion, he is an absolute wrong piece of the puzzle in terms of hockey hosting duties. And I also, even though I think he should have never been hosting Hockey Night in Canada in the first place, you want to know something? If he was hosting hometown hockey on the Sunday night games, or /Sunday afternoon games, you know what? I think if he was the host of that, he probably would have been all right. And the reason I say that is because Hockey Night in Canada is the main program. That's where most viewers watch hockey in Canada. And I think that Stroumboulopoulos would have done okay on Sunday nights. And also, I think it would give Ron MacLean a break, because now he's hosting Hockey Night in Canada, getting on a plane right after the broadcast to go someplace in Canada, whether it's on the East Coast or the West Coast. And he's also doing Coach's Corner. Like, I think they should just have Ron MacLean hosting Hockey Night in Canada and putting up with Cherry every Saturday night. And get someone else like Stroumboulopoulos to do the hometown hockey segments. Because if he was just doing it on a sideshow like the Sunday games, I think he would be okay. And I think he would actually be somewhat tolerable. But now, in my opinion, I think Rogers has screwed it up so bad that, unfortunately, Stroumboulopoulos had to take the fall. And in fact, I hear one of the higher-ups with Rogers hockey, with the Rogers hockey department, was actually fired. Well, gee, if that wasn't any indicator that Rogers has been having some issues since they took over, I don't know what is. But anyways, that's it for this video. And I honestly think that these changes to Hockey Night in Canada's program are for the better. And I think the cuts to the regional broadcasts are probably going to be a good thing in the long run too. And I'd rather they have one good program than a bunch of little crappy programs. And whether it turns out for the better or worse, time will tell. But I kind of think that with Ron MacLean taking over for Hockey Night in Canada hosting duties, and getting back to doing it again, I kind of think that Hockey Night in Canada is going to be a whole hell of a lot better starting next season. Anyways, I hope you viewers out there enjoyed this video, and if you're one of my subscribers and you really like this backdrop, please let me know, because personally, I think it's something I'm going to be doing more often, because I think it's pretty cool. And to the YouTuber who suggested to me about doing possibly a video sharing my favorite jerseys, I want to thank you for the suggestion, and I'm definitely going to be working on a video about that pretty soon. And also, speaking of that, these two jerseys here are actually two of my personal favorite jerseys. So anyways, with that, that's it for this video, and I hope you all enjoyed it, and as always, until I make my next video, take care and bye for now.